Local media report that up to 1 million people have taken to the streets of Seoul for the latest protest. Does the South Korean president have a chance to keep her post, do you think, at this stage after that?
I think it's very unlikely. Park Geun-hye is not only a corrupt government, it's an ultra-right government. It's seen in Korea as an extension of American power. In fact, it's a puppet of the United States. The United States still has tens of thousands, perhaps 38,000 U.S. troops still occupying South Korea 60 years after the end of the Korean War. Her father, Park, the dictator, was put into power by the CIA in the United States in 1961 and stayed there until 1979, where he served as a puppet of American power in that part of the world. And during that time, tens of thousands of people were killed or tortured or imprisoned just because they wanted to speak out. So her base to begin with was small. It was the right wing in Korean politics. Now her approval rating is about 5%. I don't see how she survives.
What are the ramifications of this further afield? How worrying is the South Korean chaos for Washington, for instance?
Well, I think it really upsets the apple cart for the United States and for the so-called Asia pivot. Park Geun-hye was sort of a reliable ally. Not only does the United States occupy South Korea, but Park Geun-hye, again, in defiance of the population, the South Korean population's own desires, has gone along with the Pentagon to put THAAD, to deploy THAAD, the high-altitude missile shield, so-called, in South Korea, which makes, of course, South Korea the target, and the people in South Korea target in any kind of global conflagration. The people in South Korea don't want that. You just had President Duterte in the Philippines, another key ally of the United States, renouncing the idea that he could be a puppet of Washington when he went to Beijing. I think the Asia pivot is in shambles, and I think what's happening in South Korea is extremely important to the deterioration, perhaps complete utter failure of this policy.
Well, indeed, the U.S. seems to be having a lot of trouble hanging on to its friends in Southeast Asia, doesn't it? Let's quickly hear how the State Department here sees it, though.
This idea that people are turning away from the United States and turning to China, I think, is just not borne out by the facts.
What do you mean it's not borne out by the facts that countries in greater numbers in Southeast Asia are becoming friendlier with China? I mean, it is completely borne out by the facts.
Name them.
Well, the Philippines, for one.
Okay, there's one.
Well, you just said that it wasn't true. Thailand, perhaps. Cambodia.
Perhaps. So
Cambodia.
You got one. You got
Laos,
one so far. You got one.
Laos.
You got one.
Laos. Cambodia. Malaysia, as we've just seen.
Okay, so we have 2 or 3, 4, whatever. There's a lot of nations in the Asia-Pacific region.
There's
My point is that this idea that there's some sort of...
So is the media exaggerating Washington's troubles in the region?
No, they're not exaggerating. You know, Asia is the most dynamic place in the world. It's 50% of the world's people. It's 40% of the gross national product in the world. It's what's happening. It's Asia. And when President Obama made the Asia pivot win in Australia, he was basically saying the U.S. preoccupation in the Middle East, meaning getting bogged down in a reckless, feckless war of aggression in Iraq and elsewhere, had made the United States unable to compete with China in this very dynamic part of the world. So the Asia pivot was supposed to get the United States back in the game, to be on top again, to write the rules, as Obama said when he was motivating TPP. But actually, by the United States pivoting on the military foot, it actually creates a situation where the people of the region say, hey, we don't want to be part of that kind of Asia pivot. Mutual respect, yes. Equality, yes. But we don't want to be against China. And so I think the policy has failed because the people in the Asian countries, the Asian governments, they don't want to be the enemy of China. They want to be its friend. They want to have mutual respect and cordial relations. That doesn't jive with a military alliance with the United States under these circumstances.
Brian Becker from the Anti-War Answer Coalition. Always good to hear your thoughts. Thanks for coming on the program.